A good writer must also be a good reader. So, fellow writers, what are you reading these days, and what lessons can you learn from it to apply to your own writing? I will answer those questions for myself in just a moment. It's Sam with another Friday video for you. I am pre-recording this one in advance rather than going live. June is just a crazy month for us. I mean, maybe for everyone, because I know everyone gets busy in the summertime, but it feels like we have one thing after another. And this Friday, when this video will air, when you're watching this probably, is actually our anniversary. So as much as I love doing this and talking about books with you guys, I'm probably not going to be thinking about literature and all that stuff on the morning of my anniversary when we're trying to have a special day or whatever. So here we are, talking about literature with you now. But let me show you the book I recently read, and we'll talk about it, okay? I recently finished Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Okay, let me tell you about this book if you didn't know much about it already. It is considered a literary classic. I hadn't read it until now. This is my one or at least one classic for the year. You know, it's not like contemporary sci-fi or a lot of the stuff I read. It's classic literature. If anyone's confused, it is not The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. That is a sci-fi book about a man who's literally invisible. This one is about a young black man in the 50s, and the title of Invisible Man is because he's someone who society doesn't see or kind of overlooks, or he doesn't have a place in society, that kind of thing. It's a good book. I admit I kind of wasn't prepared for it at first. I didn't know that much. I mean, I knew what it was. I didn't know that much about it. I picked it up at a friend's house. Some of our friends from college actually were moving, and they were getting rid of some of their books, and I picked up this copy there. And at first, I thought it was nonfiction. I knew it was about the struggles of a young black man and stuff like that. I thought it was nonfiction. It is, set in the realistic world and set in a realistic time period, but without knowing much more about it, I thought it was the author talking about his own life. I'm sure it was at least somewhat influenced by his life, but no, it is fiction. It is a novel about an unnamed narrator. Yeah, the narrator, you're in his head the whole time, and it never tells you his name. I think that's also part of what contributes to him being invisible. It's just this anonymous figure, like it could happen to anyone, or at least any black person. So yeah, and it is a long book. I wasn't prepared for that at first. I didn't really maybe look into it, but it is. This is a thick version. I mean, of course, there's been many editions, but this one's close to 600 pages. It was like 560, 570. So if you do read it, just be prepared for that. Like, it's a time commitment, or it was for me. I mean, I was worth it, but it's a time commitment. So just go into it knowing that. And I got to admit, the first little bit was hard to get into. So there's a prologue before the main story, and then once it gets to the main story, it's a little easier to follow. But I was reading the prologue in the first chapter, and I was like, some of the prologue was like non-linear, and it felt like there was some stream of consciousness stuff, and it was a narrator, the first person narrator giving his perspective, so I guess they can get to a little bit of stream of consciousness, and I was like, I'm not sure if I'm understanding this or if I'm getting into it. I asked my favorite English professor what he thought about it. My favorite English professor also happens to be my father, and he said it's a great book. He's read it and taught it many times, and he loves it, and so he's like, stick with it if you can. I'm like, okay, I'll try. I did stick with it. I'm glad I did. Still a big undertaking. So yeah, it's a 600-page book about, again, a young black man, maybe loosely autobiographical, but it is fiction. And it's written in the 50s, or published in the 50s. So yeah, it's even before even before the civil rights era and stuff like that. So obviously things are even worse than they are now for marginalized groups. And some of it even seems episodic. Like it starts with a narrator going to college, but he's not in college very long. Through an incident that's mostly not his fault, he gets kicked out of college. I mean, sorry, that's a spoiler, I guess, but it's near the beginning of the book. Then he goes to at least one or two different jobs and tries to find his place there, and doesn't stay there very long. Again, for reasons that are mostly not his fault. It feels like it's kind of just a series of unfortunate events at times, just like going from one place to another, and through circumstances that are not his fault. Again, some of it due to race and things like that. He's not just not included anywhere. Around maybe the middle of the book, he does join this group, like a political group that's fighting for the rights of minorities and things like that. And he finds a place there, but it's not without problems. It's still like, they're kind of rivals for political clout or whatever, and there's people who think he's he's going the wrong way, or like doing things the wrong way, and there's they have an enemy who's like their opponent who's like a black extremist. He says like he denounces like all friendship with white people and stuff like that. So you got lots of different facets of society, lots of different just areas of life and culture seen through the narrator's eyes. It's really interesting. I mean, I'm sure I missed a lot of things. If I was in school, I could write a paper on it. I mean, dissertations have been written on it, but I read it kind of semi-casually. I read it. It was, it took me time to read and time and effort, but I wasn't like trying to take notes or anything to write a report on it. So I'm sure I missed some stuff, and I'm sure if I went back again, I'd get more out of it. But huge cast of characters and just all coming in and going from the narrator's life, and it kind of shows how he relates to each one of them. So there was definitely some coming of age elements too. It's not solely about racism, but I mean that's a big part of it too. What was I going to say? I wanted to talk about I did a video a little while ago about worldview. Actually, it was only like 2 weeks ago. You can go find it if you want, about what's your story's worldview, and I was trying to talk about how to convey worldview without being preachy. I think this does a good job of it because obviously there's a message there. Obviously, it's at least somewhat about racism, at least a good bit. But it's like, but there's not like a part where the narrator or the author speaking to the narrator gets up and says, so just like I don't know, just so everyone's clear, racism is wrong, and as a black person, I'm fully equal and all that stuff. Doesn't come out and say that in explicit words. It's not. I don't think it's preachy or in your face to the reader. And hopefully everyone knows that. And if there is a message, which I think the message is kind of the suffering and the injustice that black people, especially at that time, go through. That message is there certainly, but it's not. But I don't think it's like slap you in the face with it. At the same time, if you're reading this book, you probably know what you're getting into. You probably know at least some of what the message is. So you're hopefully prepared for it. Hopefully, no one's. Anyway, not to get into too serious issues. Like, I don't think anyone who's super bigoted is going to be reading this book to begin with. I mean, maybe, but anyway. The worldview is there, but it's not pushy. It's not in your face, is what I'm saying. And so it's just a really good coming of age tale and kind of a just slice of life from this man's perspective that gives you, this gives me a perspective I hadn't really seen before, or that I obviously, as a white person, don't know as much about this perspective. So that was cool. There's elements of just like I said, different factions or different groups in society kind of conflicting with each other. There's even what could be called black on black racism, which it's not a term I invented. I actually recently read Ibn Kenny's book about how to be an anti-racist, and he talked about something that basically he talked about basically blacks being racist toward other blacks, or being prejudiced or saying things like like, how could you act that way in front of the white people? Don't you know you have to represent us better? Or things like that some black people might say to each other, and that's in this book. Some of his black mentors just acting that way and not giving him a break because they thought he was being a disgrace to the race and things like that. But the book is not like all black people are good and all white people are evil. Not at all. It is multifaceted, and it does show the complexity of life and of race, which I think also helps with the worldview not being overly preachy. It's there, but it's not like in your face, dogmatic, or insulting or anything like that. But yeah, really good book, really interesting. Again, it's an undertaking, so if you read it, proceed with caution, but I think it's worth your while if you do choose to. And again, if there was a writing tip you can apply from this, I'd say it's a good example of how to do worldview well. To have a worldview that you're writing from, and have a moral, if you will, that you want to contribute, but at the same time, you're not pushing it on people's faces, you're not insulting them or their intelligence, whatever. You're just telling a good story and being honest about your perspective, and then the rest follows. So I think Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man, does that well. Go check it out if that sounds like your thing. And in the meantime, keep on writing and doing your thing as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.